Good evening and welcome to Swartz Talking Sports. I'm your host, Les Swartz. Thanks for joining us. We got another great show lined up for you tonight. I've already checked out the listing here. We got some questions ready to roll for our guests tonight. Before we bring on my co-host tonight, unfortunately, some sad news to pass along. Our second co-host, Benny the Book. Everyone loves Benny the Book. His mom passed away the other day up in New York, Carmela. So our thoughts and prayers are with Benny's extended family. So Ben, we're with you. We miss you, and we'll see you next week. Good luck tomorrow. I know it's going to be a tough day, but we're with you, bro. So with that, let me bring on my co-host for tonight, the man from Jacksonville, the Florida A&M National Championship quarterback, Al the Rattler Chester, voice of the Rattlers football and basketball broadcast with Melvin Beal.
My man, what's going on? Greetings from Jacksonville, home of the 2-6 Jaguars and the site for the Florida-Georgia game this Saturday. I hope you enjoyed your vacation, Les.
It was a great time, man. Like I said, it was. We had a great show last week. Great meeting you a week ago on Sunday. It was one of the highlights of our trip. It was just great. As you say, breaking bread. So that was so cool. But we have another FAMU connection tonight, right? We seem to be, boy, I'll tell you, I didn't realize how popular FAMU was, but it is.
It's the greatness of FAMU. And it's homecoming week.
And it's on top of that, it's homecoming week. So with
Absolutely.
that, we don't have an opening reel tonight, but we've got a very special guest tonight, former NFL punter, predominantly with the Minnesota Vikings, actually on the Minnesota Vikings 25th and 40th anniversary teams. Yeah, he was that good, folks, and a tremendous athlete for a punter. So let's bring on the Minnesota Vikings, the NFL alum, and a FAMU alum, Mr. Greg Coleman.
Greg. Look out, Room. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Good to see you, man.
Always good to see you, my friend. Les, good chatting with you, and
absolutely
looking forward to tonight.
Greg, thank you so much for taking time to jump on. I appreciate it. Listen, let's just jump right into it, man. This is part of the FAMU connection, right? I mean, I know, Al, you're going to talk about, Greg growing up and obviously, a good friend of the show, your cousins with Vince. Vince, was our first real big time, former pro athlete to come on the show. And he's been a real friend of the show through this for the first year, getting us guests and really helping us. So, but maybe talk a little bit about your relationship with the man, my co-host right there, right? If walls could talk, you guys both said, but I mean, we'll jump into it, what you did growing up, but man, your first time meeting Al Chester, what was it like? And what was it like that year when you guys roomed together?
Well, I actually met the legend before I actually met Al.
The legend.
Great athlete, leader in that school, leader in his community. I mean, great relationship with both mom and dad. So it was, I'm not going to say it was fate that we were roommates at FAMU when he first came in as a freshman. But it was a tradition at FAMU that most of the upperclassmen would take a freshman or sophomore or a younger player and take them under their wings and try to give some guidance and direction. I mean, my guy was Henry Killer Lawrence, three-time Super Bowl champion from the Oakland Raiders.
That's right.
He was my guy. He took me under his arm. And so those kind of, I'm not going to say traditions, but that was a culture at FAMU. That's a culture in HBCU institutions to give back, because we all stand on the shoulders of somebody else. Mm-hmm. And what I did for Al, I'm sure that he found some younger Rattler and tried to do the very same thing. Now he came in a little hot-headed and a little cocky, which was fine, because he needed that. He needed that. And it really wasn't cocky, Les. It was the confidence of coming from a great program over there, Ribault, and knowing the expectations of what was expected of him at Florida A&M. And he may have had some visions of him starting as a freshman, but he proved his worth on the field as a freshman, which was very, very rare for a freshman quarterback to start at FAMU.
Well, I got to say, Al, and I'm going to let you kick this thing off with Greg, but I got to say, in just knowing Al a little bit and then meeting him, Al's a confident person. He just is. He's steadfast in his beliefs, and he sticks by it. And I think that's an awesome trait to have. And I wish I want to say, I wish a lot of us could be more like Mr. Al Chester after meeting him. That's the way I feel. But Al, I'm going to let you kick this thing off with Greg, based on growing up and things at FAMU before we get into the pro career. So go ahead.
Well, Greg, I tell you what, I did exactly what you said, man. Vince Coleman actually was my freshman. He was a freshman my senior year, so I passed that tradition on to Vince, and we talk about that all the time. But happy homecoming, my brother. I tell you what, I like to echo that I really appreciate you taking time. You're a busy guy. Wednesday night is a special night for you. I know you're supposed to be in church right about now, so I thank you for taking the time, and tell Bishop thank you for allowing you to step away and hang out with us for a little while. But listen,
it's marketplace ministry. Whatever we do, wherever you can make a difference at, and that's what ministry is about. It's about serving. Ministry is outside of the four walls of the church, so we're good. Let me say this real quick about Al, and we talk about the confidence, and I using tongue in cheek when I said that he was cocky. No, he was confident. You had to be confident coming from our community, coming from our culture, coming from our neighborhood, coming from the north side. My mama used to have a saying that it's a sorry dog that won't wag its own tail. So he got that honest, and it served him well. So my hat's off to you, my brother.
Well, let's get this thing started, Greg. Tell everybody. Now, I know you now, but I think the fans and the folks who are listening in, they want to know, where did it all start for Greg Coleman? How did you end up being a punter with all that speed? You didn't play wide receiver, defensive back. You did run track, but I mean, I'm cheating a little bit. But tell them how it all started for you in Jacksonville, Florida.
Well, I was a little shorty, about 8 years old, over in Mixontown, which was on the west side of Jacksonville. And I got a football for Christmas. And, there were beer cans laying around, or pop cans, whatever you want to call them. So I bent the top off of a pop can, and I made a homemade tee. And I set the ball in the pop can, and that's how I started kicking the ball over the fence. Then I started kicking over the electric wires in front of the house. And then I started kicking it over the house. And pretty soon I garnered I'm not going to say a reputation, but a knack for punting and kicking. But here's where the rubber really met the road. I was watching a game between the Baltimore Colts, and I don't know who they were playing. They were playing an old Memorial Stadium, and it was during the winter, and it was snowing and raining, and Colts wore those clean white unis, and everybody's uniform was dirty and bloody and muddy. But I saw the punter come off the bench in his clean white uniform and punted. He had 10 guys in front of him protecting him. He punted the ball and walked back to the bench, put on his little overcoat, and sat there till the next fourth down. And at a very young age, I said, that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to be. So that's where it all started.
Wow. That's incredible.
All right,
wow.
well, who did you admire as a punter, though, growing up? I mean, I know you talked about, using the top of the can and teeing it up, but did you model yourself after anybody? Did you see any punters, kickers in the league or in college or in high school, anywhere that you admired as a youngster growing up?
Well, very interesting question, but I saw a lot of punters, but I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And as I continued to grow and worked on that craft, I saw the men of color, Parse Gilman. I knew Parse was a punter. Marlon Briscoe also punted. Dave Mays also punted as a quarterback. But all these guys played other positions. And I saw a few guys in college. I almost went to Fayetteville State because they had a young man by the name of Kenny Gamble, who was one of the top punters in the league back in the early 70s. So wherever I could get film and video to watch these men who I call one of the greatest positions in all of football. I will go back and digress because my sophomore year at Raines High School in Jacksonville, I got my tutelage as a place kicker from, you call him Leonard Truck Robinson, but we call him Foots.
Leonard Truck, the basketball
Leonard
player?
Foots, absolutely.
Wow.
Foots was our starting quarterback at Raines, but he was also our place kicker.
Wow.
And I gained and garnered a lot of my technique, a lot of skills. He worked with me as a young freshman. So I owe a lot to who you guys call Leonard Truck Robinson, but Foots was my guy in terms of place kicking. In terms of punting, maybe just being self-taught for the most part, trial and error. I wasn't the best punter in my neighborhood, but I was one of the few guys who really wanted to punt. And that made the difference for me. And I figured out I could punt for both teams. When you pick your side, I was the last guy chosen. So instead of throwing it out on fourth down, I punted and kicked for both teams. So, hey, man, I was fat and happy. And here was the other piece, Chet. I wasn't very big. And at the time, I wasn't very fast. And I really didn't like the sight of blood and really didn't want anybody hitting on me.
You and me,
so
both.
Punting and kicking was my out.
Well, we've got some questions lined up already. The green light is on, so we're going to throw this over to Joni, my amazing chat girl, to throw out a couple questions to our tonight's special guest, NFL punter Greg Coleman.
Well, hello, Greg. So we have lots of.
How are you?
I'm good. We have lots of questions. First up, Barry Smith, Vikings current roster. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think Kevin O'Connor and Kwesi Mensah, the general manager, has put together a great roster. And I will share with you that it's only been 3 years since I left the broadcast. Mm-hmm. And I go back and there are only 13 current players that were still on that team 3 years ago. So that tells you the attrition and the turnover and the change in the National Football League. I like what they've done. I think Sam Darnold has been a great surprise, a pleasant surprise. The defense.
I agree. I totally agree.
The defense is playing lights out, although they've struggled the last couple of weeks, not being able to finish. And any coach will tell you, I don't care how you play the first 3 or 4 quarters, first 1, 2, or 3, but in that fourth quarter, you got to have a dog mentality and you got to be able to close it out. You got to be able to finish. They had an opportunity to finish the Lions. They also had an opportunity to finish the Rams last week out in LA, last Thursday night. I still believe that they're in a great position. Some people, the naysayers will come out. Well, see, I told you the Vikings weren't real. Let me tell you something. I'd rather be 5-2 any day than to be 2-5. So they're still in the top of the heap of the NFC North. They're a team and a force to be reckoned with. As a matter of fact, I'll get an opportunity to go up and see them this weekend playing the Colts. After I'm following Al's footsteps. He's been an analyst for Rattler Football. Hell, I had to chase him again. So I picked up the microphone again. I'm doing maybe 3 games this year, 1 a month for HBCU Go, supporting, HBCU colleges and in football. And I am having a blast. So I'll leave Atlanta Saturday night after the Fort Valley State and Benedict game, heading up to Minnesota to pull for the purple.
And that's Greg. That's Greg Coleman, the analyst. There we go. This is a great picture, you guys. And that's interesting about the Colts game. They just benched Richardson and Joe Flacco. They are dusting off Joe Flacco once again to go play quarterback for the Colts. So this is going to be an interesting game. And they've got to pick up some games on the Lions, who are surging right now.
Yes,
great question, Barry. Great question. Let's get another one, Joni.
Okay, Tom Calder. I'm kind of skipping around here
for
the audience's sake.
That's fine.
What do you think of the NFL new kickoff rule?
Oh, I like this one. What do you think, Greg?
You know what? Every time the NFL attempts to make the game safer, who do they screw with? The punters and kickers. You know, I get it. Trust me. I'm just mouthing off.
No, but you're right though.
I do believe that it will cut down on concussions. I think it's some of the nuances. I think they probably will tweak just a little bit next year. I'm not going to say it's a wait and see type of a situation, but the initial focus behind the changes that they've made to the new kickoff rule, I've seen enough tough hits on special teams, especially the kickoff, the most violent series of plays in all of football, whether it's in Pee Wee, Pop Warner, high school, college, or the pros. Something had to be done. And I think other leagues, maybe colleges and high schools, may follow suit because it's been a long-term study, you know, talking about the collisions on kickoffs. So I'm okay with it, but I'll just be very, very interested to see the study and how many lives it saved over the years, because I've got too many teammates, former teammates, that I've lost or in tough shape because of concussions.
Yeah, from a fan standpoint, you know, Greg, I'll just be the selfish guy. It's such an electric play. You know, kickoff returns. It can flip a game in a heartbeat. You know, all of a sudden, boom, guy runs it back either for a touchdown or, you know, inside the opponent's 50-yard line and sets up the offense. So I understand that you definitely want to make the game safer. You want the players to have longer careers and things like that. I get it, but from my standpoint as a fan, it's a very exciting play that now you don't get to see anymore.
Well, we all have to adjust,
right?
Because if you don't have the ability to adjust, I say adjust, adapt, and execute a different game plan. There is the opportunity to break more kickoffs even now than before, because once you get past that first wave, you know, at the 20-yard line, man, it's Katie by the door.
Yeah.
So there is an opportunity, and you'll see coaches. They'll coach these guys up, and they'll get the best return guys and the best blockers, and they'll figure this thing out. And I guarantee you'll see more exciting return games here real soon.
Oh, good question from Tom.
You know, sociologically, change is difficult for people to digest anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think that it being new, and part B to that, Greg, you kind of answered the question, was once the NFL tweaks it, I see it trickling down to college and maybe even high school in the coming days. I mean, in coming years, we'll see how it plays out. But you know, any change is difficult.
Yeah, I'm going to go a different path, and I know this wasn't part of the question, but we're talking about concussions, and I think more kids come out of college who are concussed before they get to the NFL than most people realize, because I think the scrutiny is on the NFL because that's the last bastion of hope, you know, for adulthood. But a lot of these kids coming out of college, I guarantee you, they're concussed more in the past before they get to the NFL.
It's a good question, Tom. Tom's our resident Rutgers expert, by the way. Joni, go ahead. A couple more?
Okay. Yes, we do have a couple more. So a couple of people want to know about who you think the best punters are. So Rob wants to know about modern day punter. Do you think it's Cook from Jacksonville? And Daniel Kistart, who do you think was the best NFL punter in your day?
Well, I think you're talking to him right now.
Present company excluded.
Good answer.
Yeah.
You want to exclude me?
Well, you're our guest, but who?
Well, obviously you can't talk about punters unless you talk about the Godfather. And that's the name that we gave Ray Guy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a very, very quick, funny story. When Henry Lawrence was a senior, when the Raiders were recruiting him and saying that he was going to be their top draft pick, I mean, we had a phone in Sampson Hall, Al, and you know what I'm talking about, that community phone. Al Davis used to call that phone. John Madden used to call that phone. Gene Upshaw and Art Shell and all of those guys. And I would take the call. And I remember talking to John Madden. I said, Mr. Madden, Coach Madden, I'm punting here at FAMU. And when I graduate, I'm going to come and punt for the Raiders because silver and black is my favorite color. And he would laugh. Yeah, Greg, that's good. But we already got a guy. And I said, I don't care who you got. But he was obviously talking about Ray Guy. And when I got in the league, we would share that story and would talk to Ray about that. But obviously, you have to start with the Godfather, Ray Guy. And back in the day, we had some great punters. Sean Landetta, Dave Jennings from the Giants. And, the list goes on and on and on. In terms of modern day punters, I mean, Cookie is one of the tops. Man, I like the kid from the Steelers right now. The kid from the 49ers. Obviously, the young man from Seattle has been doing it a long time. But I will say, and I know you didn't ask me this, the Aussie rule punt, I totally hate it. Because it doesn't take any skills.
So what is that
to
from?
be an Aussie rule punter? All you're doing is throwing the nose down and kicking it in and hope for a backspin bounce like you do like you're hitting a pitching wedge and get a little backspin on it. But you kick to the corners. That's where the rubber meets the road, because now you got to be so precise, because nobody wants to sacrifice average.
Right.
It's a lost art.
I was going to ask you about that, Greg, because to me, the coffin corner, which you were known as, right? I mean, the coffin corner is a weapon. Forget about the average part of it. I don't care if you've got to punt it 30 yards and you pin your opponent inside the 15 and they can't run it out. There's no threat of a run back. Why in the world wouldn't more punters do this as a weapon? And they don't use it.
Well, number one, they're afraid of the short punts. I'm not going to use that other S word. I'll say the short punt.
SHANK?
Sacrificing, because punters are paid because of averages.
Right.
I didn't hear the word. I didn't hear it. I don't use it in punting. I don't use it in golf.
Okay.
So
all right.
I just say the short punt. But the sacrificing in punting is the key to that in the pros. Now, I'll give you a brief story on how that started for me. At FAMU, we're at practice one day, and Pop Kittles is my kicking coach. Pop was also the receiver coach, a very wise sage. And I'm hitting the ball 50, 60, 70 yards down the field in practice. And Pop just walks up to me nonchalantly, and Chet, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And he said, well, baby, why are you kicking it right to him? I said, well, Pop, that's where he's standing. He said, well, hell, baby. Make him work for his supper. Kick it to the right, kick it to the left. He said, and I guarantee you, baby, if you do it on a consistent basis, they'll find a place for you at the next level. And I was stupid enough to believe what Pop Kittles was telling me. And that's how that became my forte when I got to Minnesota. Oh. But Grant said, hey, can you, there's another story there. If we have time, I'll share it. But kicking to the corners, he said, can you kick that to the corners whenever you want to? And I was trying out for Minnesota. I got cut from Cleveland. I said, Coach, all I need is an opportunity. Because what I'd done, the team was practicing at one end of the field, and I had the free field, the other half. I put a garbage can on the goal line, one on the 5 and one on the 10. I took 10 balls, went to the 50. I put 2 in on the goal line, 1 on the 5 and 2 in on the 10. By that time, guys had stopped practice. And Bud Moses down, and again, asked me that question, can you do that when you want? I said, Coach, all I need is an opportunity. So again, what I learned at FAMU, the nurturing that I got, the tutelage that I got, and the belief that I got at FAMU served me well for 12 years in the National Football League.
Yeah, Les, but what he's not telling you is he probably was a better place kicker. He was a punter.
Yeah.
The guy could kick it, man. I mean, he could hit him. Back in the day, man, he won a football game. He scored all the points for us. his senior year, my freshman year. I mean, the guy lit it up, man. You talking about writing it up so they can light it up so they can write it up. Greg was doing that, man.
Well, I had to bail the freshman out. I mean, hell, he couldn't get it in the end zone. So, the punters and kickers are the low man on the totem pole until fourth down. And I tell all these college kids that, high school kids that, don't worry about, you're not getting all the ink and all of that stuff and highlights, man. But on fourth down, you're the most important person on that team.
Well,
something. And what's rare though, Greg? What's rare is that back then you didn't find guys who were punters and kickers. Now they specialize. You got a punter and a kicker. We had one guy who did it all. He kicked off, he punted, he kicked field goals. I mean, and he chased Roger around the field.
Well, hold on. We're going to get into Roger. Don't you worry. I got some inside intel on that one. But I was just going to say the place kicker, Greg, I hate to say it, they're either at the end of the game, they're the GOAT or they're the hero. And that's just the way that people look at it. But we got some more questions, Joni?
We do.
Greg, You're popular. We have more questions here.
Eric Mayer, he asks, as a Viking great player, I would love to hear what you have to say about playing for another Viking great coach in Bud Grant.
Oh,
wow. I have a picture on my wall, and I was one of the picks that I sent. Unfortunately, we didn't connect on that. But I have a picture here on my wall where Bud Grant, with those steely blue eyes, looking at me after, I think it was a fake punt. Well, it wasn't a fake punt. I made a decision to run. And Bud comes up to me and he's looking at me with those steely blue eyes. And he said, "Hey, listen, what happened?" I said, "Well, I thought they were going to block it. You said do anything, but don't get it blocked." So I took off and ran. Now, you got to remember, we got Chuck Foreman, we got Ricky Young, we got Ahmad Rashad, the great offense, Fran Tarkenton, all of the greats. Mm-hmm. And we were 4th and 11. And I choose to take off and run to try and get the first down. But I would say Bud Grant probably would never get beat on the lack of details. That was his, he wouldn't miss a beat, the little things. And it was the little things that caused us to be such a winning franchise, such a winning team. And it permeated down to all of us. He said, you take care of the little things, the big things are going to take care of themselves. What a lot of people don't know, because of that steely presence, Bud Grant was probably one of the biggest practical jokers you ever want to see.
Interesting.
He was a big hunter and fisherman. So he would bring animals into the office and scare the secretaries and all the female employees. At least scared a lot of the guys on the team. But Bud was a well-rounded, and I think he understood players more than anything else, because Bud was one of the first free agents. He was one of the first two-way players. Bud was, a lot of people don't know this. He played for the Minneapolis Lakers as a basketball player.
Did not know that.
Yes. Wow. And he was just a phenomenal coach. I learned so much from him. Have so much respect for him. Because the records prove it itself, with the exception of
couple of Super Bowls,
finishing enough to win at least one of those 4 Super Bowls.
And unfortunately, he went up against some, incredible teams at that time, right? It's unfortunate. Now, Eric's I got to let you know, Greg, Eric is a massive fan of yours. He's a huge Minnesota Viking fan. I met him in Jacksonville a week ago, lives in Jacksonville Beach, has a massive blow-up Minnesota Vikings guy out front of his house, watches the games on Sunday. So he was very excited that we had you on tonight. So big fan of yours and the Vikings.
Well, it's so interesting that you mentioned that. Just today, I met probably the biggest Minnesota Vikings fan, and he is a lung specialist at a hospital here in Jacksonville that happens to be taking care of a very, very dear friend of mine. And he gave me a video of his man cave. Now, Chet, when I tell you he's got a man cave, oh my God, OMG.
Oh boy.
It is incredible. So Dr. Kelly, hey man, he even went to London and painted his face and all of that stuff because he's a huge Vikings fan. And one thing about Purple Nation, they travel well, regardless of where they are in the country. They were well represented in LA last Thursday night when if they pan the stadium next Sunday, you're going to think that it was a Vikings home game.
Wow.
So they traveled just that well.
All right. Well, let's. Can we get some more, Joni?
We do.
We
yes.
have more.
Yes, we do.
Sorry. Yeah, we got to go with the questions. The viewers are lining up, baby.
They are lining up.
Hey.
So, so we have a fan in Chicago who wants to know, what do you think about Tory Taylor, the Australian punter drafted by the Bears?
Oh. Well, we know your thoughts on Australian punters,
Yes.
so
I will say that as the game evolves and punters and kickers bring whatever style and technique they have to the NFL, you have to adjust, and especially if they're successful. The way that I did it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only way.
Mm-hmm.
It was the way that I chose to do it, what worked for me. Kicking to the corners, having a flutter ball that could, nose turn over and come down flat. That was what worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
What works for these young kids now, you look at the RPOs, the running gun, the run and shoot, whatever you want to call the offense with quarterbacks. That was taboo many, many years ago. It was the drop back quarterback. But now the run and gun, the run and shoot, that's the game today. So as players evolve, the league has to evolve. And I think fans have to evolve. And we as former players and old timers, just because that's the way that we did it, that does not make it the gospel.
Yeah.
It was gospel back then.
right.
But there's a modern day gospel in terms of football and positions and adjustments and how the game has emerged. So to answer the question, if it's working for the Bears, that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we all have to adjust, right? The game's modernized.
Hey, I got one. Les. Here, it's homecoming week at FAMU. Greg, your greatest memory of FAMU while you were there on the football field. I know you got some great memories now. I'm just talking about the football field, sir.
And we're not mentioning ding-a-ling.
Well, okay, I'll answer both those questions, Les, since you mentioned Ding-a-ling. That
Okay.
was my nickname in college.
Okay.
How I got that name, there was always a freshman talent show.
Okay.
Henry Lawrence, being my mentor, took me under his wing. I happened to be singing the old Chuck
My
Berry song,
ding-a-ling, Chuck Berry.
My Ding-a-ling in the shower.
Oh, God.
He comes in and said, freshman, you're going to sing that song on the freshman talent show.
Oh, jeez.
And
My
that's
God.
what I sang. And I mean, I killed it. I killed it. And from that day on, I was known as Ding-a-ling.
Ding-a-ling.
Now, an
Best
amazing memory
Yes.
on the football field. I had a pet dog
Roger.
during my college years at FAM. Everybody knew Roger. Roger went to class. Everybody would feed Roger. We were playing a game one day, and we left Roger in the dorm. Somebody had empathy on Roger, and probably the conversation went like this: Roger, what you doing in here? Because we got a game today. And Roger probably looked like that. Yeah, man, they locked me in here. They left me in here. Oh, man, come on out. Come on, go with me. So Roger goes out, knows exactly where the field is. And I'm out on the field getting ready for a punt. And Roger comes out, running out on the field. They have to
gosh.
stop the game, call timeout. And Coach Hubbard, Rudy Hubbard, he lit into me. Ding-a-ling, get that damn dog off this field. So I had to go get Roger. Somebody came and got Roger, and I don't know whether they took him back to the dorm, but that had to be one of the most memorable times that I had at FAMU.
What kind of dog was
Same
Roger?
question.
What kind of dog was Roger?
Roger was a shepherd
Okay.
mixed with, he had one ear pointed up and the other ear pointed down. So he was a little shepherd mix.
Okay. All right.
Same question as a pro. Your most memorable moment as a pro?
Getting in a fight with Lawrence Taylor.
Why would you Why would you do that?
Temporarily insane.
Yes.
I was holder for PATs and extra points, and it was a bot snap, so I got up through the pass. We completed. And this guy went at my knees. I thought it was a DB, number 46. Well, and I grabbed his helmet and I slammed it into the turf. And when he got up, it was number 56, not 46.
Oh.
So Lawrence Taylor started foaming at the mouth, cursing, talking about how intimate he and my mother were on several occasions. And he said that what he was going to do to me. And you know that Rocky song, The Eye of the Tiger?
Yes.
My whole life flashed in front of me. And I'm trying to figure out, I look back for the PAT team, everybody was gone. So it was just me and LT. And my mind flashed on a golf tournament that we had participated in during the offseason. And it just stuck there. And I said, LT, man, you run into my knees, you hit my knees. We can't play golf no more during the offseason. And whatever that was, that triggered something in his mind. So he stopped foaming at the mouth. He still had his fist balled up. He was foaming, still talked about how much he loved my mother, and told me not to do it anymore. I think that had to be the most scariest moment that I ever had on a football field. One of the most memorable experiences. I made Lawrence Taylor unball his fist.
Yeah. First of all, Al, if there's someone you don't want upset with you on an NFL field or anywhere, it's Lawrence Taylor, right?
Absolutely.
We have more questions, Joni?
We do. Do we have time for two more questions?
Yeah, we have time for two more. We've gone. Greg, can we have you for like 5 or 10 more minutes? Is that okay?
I'm yours, man.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Okay.
Great. I love that Roger story, by the way.
Yeah, Joni's a big German Shepherd. She loves German Shepherds.
I love that story.
Okay.
So Daniel Kisthart, fake punts seem to be successful more often than not, yet they're so rare. Your take? Should there be more attempts?
Well, I had the green light, but Bud Grant told me that if I messed up and if I didn't make it, to keep running. So you had to be strategic. I mean, you would learn tendencies and watch film and all of those things. You knew if they were in a return, they were doubling my gunners. They come up, they take a hit, and they turn around. And a lot of times I just chased right behind them.
Mm-hmm.
But also there were down in distances. You talk about analytics and all of those things, tendencies, whether it was a fake pass, a fake run. I bet on me. Although I was not a quarterback like Al, but I had the ability to throw the ball. But I bet on me because once the ball left my hand, it's out of my control. I could control whether the tight end was going to make the catch or the gunner. So I depended on my speed, which I use as a threat every now and then. But yeah, I do believe that it takes a special head coach to pull the trigger with a fake punt versus a special teams coach, because a special teams coach he's just covering his behind.
Exactly.
But if the head coach calls it, hey, it's all good.
I was going to say the special team coach is going to get fried if it doesn't work, right? So good question, Dan. What about Joni? Another one? We got one more for Greg?
Yes. Mark Moyer, during the Ravens game Sunday, they had a ball that was not kicked due to something loose inside. Have you ever kicked a ball so hard to make something fall apart inside?
I can't say that I have. That could have been a air needle that broke off when they were inflating the ball. That could have been, falling around in there. But for the life of me, I cannot imagine that anybody has enough force to shake loose the inner tubings of a football. Because if you've ever watched one of those documentaries on how they put those things together, they're pretty good. So to answer your question, no, I have not seen that.
Now,
although we did have the opportunity back in the day to have our own kicking balls until some of these modern day punters and kickers took advantage of the option to have your own kicking balls. Hell, and they came out with big fat balloons and all of that stuff. So it forced the league to adjust again to the small balls in there. They're guarded by lock and key and armed guards and all of that kind of stuff until game day on Sunday.
I wanted to ask you that one question because, we had, I grew up in New England, even though I'm a Charger fan, I was a Pats guy, Tom Brady and Deflategate. We all knew, did he, didn't he? We don't know to this day what happened. But to your knowledge, not you, but have you ever heard the scuttlebutt from many players where back in the day, John Madden was saying, oh, we got rumors that Ray Guy was inflating the balls with helium to make it go higher. With all of that, listen, guys they'll do whatever it is to take that little edge, right? He'll take it all the way to the edge to get that little edge in a game. Have you ever heard of anything like that where maybe they overinflated the balls to make the air?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a ball that was my punting ball game day, and it was a old practice ball. That had a lot of thump to it, had a little bounce to it. That was my ball. We also had the opportunity to put balls especially up in Minnesota. The only heater we had, we couldn't stay warm as players using heaters because Bud Gretton didn't allow it. But we could put the balls in the warmer because of the snow and the rain and all of those things to keep them dry. Well, I kept my punting ball in there regardless of whether it was raining or not. Those were the rules back then, but you didn't abuse them. But I can tell you, my punting ball actually let's put it this way, it gave me a lift.
That's a good way to put it.
That's a good way to say it.
Do we have another question?
I got one, Greg. Hey, how about this? 10 words or less. I'm going to give you some names of some people. Give me 10 words or less what they made to you right off the rip. Ray Guy.
Made punters a household name.
Reggie Roby.
A very, very dear friend who should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Jerry Burns.
One of the funniest men I have ever met in my life. Jerry Burns could be blessing you out because of a screw up, and he's laughing and giggling. I mean, we called him Burgess Meredith. I mean, the old actor. That's who he reminded all of us. Burnsy was my guy. He was a player's coach.
Ahmad Rashad.
The softest hands that I have ever experienced next to Paul Warfield.
Wow.
Bud Grant.
The genius.
Last one, Ralph Boston.
A gentleman, a mentor. Ralph Boston, there are a lot of different adjectives to describe love. Ralph Boston is love.
Wow.
And I used him as the last one to segue into what you're doing now. Tell everybody what you're doing now and the impact you're having with high school track here in Jacksonville, but around the country.
Well, my track coach and mentor, and also one of the founders of the Bob Hayes track meet. Bob being from Jacksonville, the only man that God blew breath in to win an Olympic gold medal and 2 Olympic gold medals and a Super Bowl ring. I was the meet announcer since 1976 after I graduated from FAMU. I think I missed one when my daughter was born. And he would always say, when are you going to come back home and help me with this track meet? When are you going to come back and take this thing over? I say, Coach, you ain't never going nowhere. I'll help you, but I'm not moving back to Jacksonville. Well, as fate had it, Mom's health started to fail, and we moved back to Jacksonville. And he said, I finally got you back here. Well, 2 weeks after we moved back, unfortunately, Coach Day passed. And the baton was forced into our hands. My wife and I, she's my CFO, Chief Financial Officer. I'm the Executive Director. And we took the Bob Hayes as it was, and we talk about adjustments, Les and Al. If you don't adjust, you stay the same, you become extinct. And we had to make some tough choices. The first was moving it from our high school, the longtime home of the Bob Hayes track meet at Raines High School, moved it to the North Florida, University of North Florida. I had never set foot on that campus. I'd never seen their facility. But Coach Day's wife said, Greg, you should go and take a look and talk to the folks over there. When I walked in, it was like God had sent a great gift, because it's one of the most magnificent track and field facilities in the country. And the opportunity arose for our kids from the Bob Hayes track meet to compete on a world-class track, world-class field. I mean, just unbelievable. So this is our third year. We shifted the Bob Hayes Hall of Fame, and the growth and the partners. The city has partnered with us. Some other corporate partners that we have. I don't call them sponsors, because a sponsor is someone who can write a check and walk away. Mm-hmm. But if you're a partner, then that means that you're invested in us. And we've got some great partners here in the city of Jacksonville. In the Bob Hayes Gala, the Hall of Fame Gala is second to none, with guys like Edwin Moses and Gail Devers. And this year we've got a very, very special class. I was hoping to be able to talk about it tonight, but we haven't informed all of those who have been nominated for the class of 2025 Bob Hayes Hall of Fame. But I guarantee you, it is going to be a class to remember. So that I had to put my professional speaking business, I'm not going to say on hold, because I'm still doing that. And that was one of the reasons that we retired from the Vikings radio broadcast, Harris Corporation, where I was a C-level executive for 25 years in the public safety arena. Al and I used to run some of the same conferences, and back in the day, loved doing that. But we made a decision to take the time that God has given us left, because there's some great journey behind us. But whatever time he gives us moving forward, we wanted to spend time with our kids and our grandkids. I wanted to work with HBCUs, because a lot of my contemporaries, guys that I played against and with, are now coming back and being head coaches at HBCU schools. And I'm doing a few broadcast games and lending my name to HBCU, and to be a part now of the Black College Football Hall of Fame is just icing on the cake. But more than anything else, one of the last words that Bob gave to me before he left, I'm talking about Bob, he said, whatever you do, keep it about the kids. In my Coach James Day said the same thing. Greg, keep it about the kids, because in its heyday, Bob Hayes was known as the largest one-day high school track meet in the nation. Now, we have done some amazing things, and coaches and schools have come back. We had 178 schools who participated last year. In our middle school meet on Friday, we had 1,500 middle schoolers. Wow. So the word is out, and there's so much history. And when I was a part of the broadcast, I would look at the roster and see where guys went to high school, and I'd find them doing pregame and say, hey, man, I remember you running into Bob Hayes. They said, you were at the Bob Hayes? Yeah, man, I've been at the Bob Hayes for years. Man, that was the greatest track meet, because if you can win at the Bob Hayes, you can win anywhere. So the legacy of Bob Hayes as a football player and as an Olympian, it's still at the heart and soul of track and field and the heart and soul of Super Bowls.
Well, Greg, Tony just put that up on the screen, so we were able to get that up for you. And when the nominees come in, let Al know, and we'll certainly share that on our show. Well, we've got 47 minutes in.
One more question.
We have one more question.
One more question.
Greg. Oh, and I had a question for Greg, too, to finish up. Go ahead, Tony. Joni, go ahead.
Okay. Kevin Campbell. Wait, let me get the question again. Okay, here it is. Al. This is for Al.
Oh,
Al, you have introduced the show to many great FAMU alumni like Greg, and including world-class Olympic athletes. Are these same class athletes coming through FAMU today?
I like to think so. Absolutely. I tell you what, FAMU is the home of some of the greatest athletes you're going to find on God's planet. And I tell you what, the attraction is not only athletics, but the education side. I mean, the stress that is put on by the administration to be one of the top schools in the nation. We have all the disciplines that you can matriculate in. And I like to think that in the years to come, the days to come, you're going to see some more contingent great athletes. And like Greg, I mean, prior to us, I mean, there were a boatload of guys who were a part of that orange and green, and they're going to hopefully show up this weekend at homecoming. But absolutely, we feel like we continue to draw, recruit, and have a big time interest from the greatest athletes on the planet.
All right, Greg.
Hey, let me add a little bit to that real quick. To talk about culture, what it meant, the nurturing that we got. Al talked about a game where I kicked 5 field goals. I go to my English class. My English teacher was Sadie Gaither. And if that Gaither name sounds familiar, that was the wife of legendary coach, one of the winningest college coaches in the history of college football, the legendary Jake Gaither. Miss Gaither said, "Are you that Coleman boy that was kicking that ball?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Well, why didn't you tell me that?" I said, "Well, Miss Gaither, I'm just coming to class to do what I'm supposed to do." She said, "When is your study hall?" And I told her it was a Wednesday night. She said, "I want you to come to my house every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock and bring all of your work, because you're not going to be like the rest of them boys from Jacksonville. You're going to graduate." Who does that? Now I'm sitting in the den of legendary Jake Gaither with pictures of Bob Hayes and Willie Gallimore and Ken Riley, and the list goes on and on and on. And Jake comes in and said, "Well, hell, Sadie, what is he doing here?" And I had a great relationship with Jake. And Sadie would say, "Jake, you get your behind out of here and leave this baby alone, because he's going to graduate." This is a major college institution. Who does that? Yeah. So when I talk passionate about FAMU, not only prepared me for the NFL, FAMU prepared me for life. And those are some lessons in teachers and instructors that I will never be able to repay. You know, we've talked about a lot of people, but we haven't said much about Rudy Hubbard, who was your college coach, Al, who gave me some sound advice after we didn't kick a field goal and we lost to Bethune-Cookman. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell Rudy Hubbard about himself. I said, "Coach, I need to talk to you." He said, "Well, Greg Coleman, you bring your behind in here and sit down." He said, "I want to talk to you too." He said, "I know you pissed because we didn't try the field goal." He said, "But let me tell you something. I watched you all week during practice, and you were hitting the ball left and right and so inconsistent. I don't know what was going on with you." But he said, "I don't know if I could have trusted you." And for a coach to tell a player those words rocked me back in my seat. I said, "Well, you never have to worry about it again." So that taught me the importance of being consistent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't be great one day and not great the next day. But that's something that I use not only in sports, but also in everyday life. Those are the kind of lessons that we got at FAMU. So when you say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Al.
Now, I'm just going to say one thing for sure. We all came there as boys, but we left as men.
Better know.
That's a fact. Well,
and I have to say, Greg, just knowing Al, but all the guests we've had on with FAMU Connections, and we're going to have another one next week, thoughtful, well-spoken, family, just compassionate. I mean, just those are just some of the things that come to my mind when just interviewing a lot of these FAMU alum through Al. So tremendous having you on the show. And before I let you go, again, one of Al's things, 10 words or less from one of your former teammates that I think is a big snub for the Hall of Fame, Chuck Foreman. I think he should be in the Hall. 10 words or less on Mr. Foreman.
Well, speaking of which, Chuck has made the first cut.
Okay.
So he is in the semis to make it in the senior division of the Hall of Fame. So here are my 10 words. One of the greatest running backs in NFL history, the spin doctor, and just a all-out good guy.
Yeah. He was a tremendous player to watch. I watched him the tail end of his career with the Patriots. He got traded, or he got cut by the Vikings and latched onto the Pats at the end of his career. But again, listen, thanks for taking the time. We went 52 minutes. I know we said 30, but we had a lot of questions. You're a very popular guy. Great answers. Al, thank you for getting Greg on. It's been fantastic. Sorry about the beginning. We really wanted to do the opening reel, and I don't know. Next time, you're going to come back.
We'll do it next time.
You're going to come back. Okay.
But let me tell you something, Les. That young man right there, he's special, and you are so fortunate, blessed, and lucky. No, you're not lucky to have him as a part of this show, because what you see is what you got.
Hey, listen, Al's the final straw that stirs the pot, baby. He's the one who makes this thing go. So, listen, Greg, good luck. I know this weekend you're going to be doing a game. You got Minnesota. We're gonna come back and do the HBCU game of the week. We do that every week. So again, have a fantastic week, Greg. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks everybody for the questions, and we'll be back with Al Chester. We're going to do the HBCU game of the week. We'll do it after this.
At Revolution Basketball Training, we improve the skills of athletes with a diverse set of training programs for all ages. With innovative techniques and an experienced training staff, we push your skills to the next level, turning weaknesses into strengths. Technology like our instant feedback system accelerates learning and is one of the many reasons we are different. Join Connecticut's largest basketball movement. Don't just play the game, revolutionize it.
Am I right, Al, the Rattler Chester, former national championship quarterback with the Florida A&M Rattlers and current analyst on the Rattlers football and basketball broadcast. Al, we just got a UConn plug. What's up, man? We just had a commercial with the UConn Huskies. We're moving up, baby.
Watch out. I tell you what, man, Greg's a special guy, man. And I tell you what, we could talk for hours with him, man. He's got a wealth of knowledge. He's doing a boatload of things, and I tell you what, well received in the community here. Glad to have him back home in Jacksonville, and he's going to continue to do the great things that we know he'll do.
Well, we're going to get Greg on again because we have to do that montage at the opening of the show. But listen, we got to do this real quick. I want to have Tony throw up college football right now. It's, man, every week it's jockeying for position. Who's going to win the conference? Who's going to get seeded first through fourth, get those buys? So based on what I've seen so far this year, Greg, Al, this is what I got, okay? You know, this thing could change. It could change next week. But as of this season, if it ended right now, I really like the Oregon Ducks winning the Big Ten in overall number one. They are ranked number one right now. The Bulldogs out of the SEC of Georgia. I got the Clemson Tigers ultimately winning the ACCL over Miami. Miami's defense has not played great of late, and they just squeaked out a few wins there. I like the BYU Cougars, the BYU Cougars, with my Jewish quarterback Jake Retzlaff at the helm there. Undefeated still. Texas is in the mix. Penn State, big game this weekend against Ohio State. Man, if Ohio State loses that game, I don't know, man. They're going to be battling for a playoff spot. I think the Hurricanes still get in with one loss. I do have A&M in there, even though they lost to Notre Dame early. I'm not a big fan of Notre Dame's schedule. I know they beat Navy. Navy kind of gave that thing away with 5 turnovers, but Ohio State in the mix. The Hoosiers jump into this thing. They're undefeated. You can't say anything wrong with them. And then you got Boise State with a great Ashton Genty. I watched that game, Al, last Friday night against UNLV. They stacked the box against him, but he still gained 128 yards and scored the touchdown to win it. Al, here's my 4 Heisman guys. I think this is your 4, Al. I don't think anybody else is going to come out of this group. These 4 guys, you're going to have the winner of the Heisman out of these 4 guys. Your thoughts on that?
I concur. I tell you what, even looking at the ranking, man, I tell you what, we talked about how a few weeks ago, how just give it a little time, the playing field is going to level out. Those 12 teams that you have there, they may be in a little different order, but I think at the end of the day, come week 12 or 13, that's what it's going to look like. Those Heisman guys, I like that 4 to be in New York for the Heisman presentation. Yeah, it's going to be a great the second half of the season is going to be great here.
It's going to be awesome. And listen, I left off Tennessee. I mean, they could bounce right into this thing. I mean, LSU, they're going to have to win out. That LSU-Alabama game in 2 weeks is an elimination game. The loser's out because they both have 2 losses.
And watch Deion now. You got to watch Deion in Colorado.
I actually think Colorado's got a shot now. They're playing defense.
They got a shot. Yep.
You know, Hunter was
Suspect.
healthy, and the Big 12, even though they got some really good teams, I just don't think they're at the Big 10 level or SEC level, and I think Colorado can
Right.
score on those teams, and I think that you could see Dion maybe winning out, and maybe the Buffaloes make a Big 12 championship game, and who knows, maybe they make the playoffs. We'll see what happens. But let's go to the HB. Well, let's do the Rattler recap real quick.
Hey, I tell you what, the Rattlers took care of business last week against Southern University. Big win. We needed to win. We finished up 4-3 from a win-loss perspective. I tell you, it was a great game. Southern travels well. They came out rough and tough, but the Rattlers were able to move the ball, matriculate down the field offensively, do some good things, had great play out of our quarterback, and we need to more of that in the coming days. We line up this week against Texas Southern for homecoming, but the HBCU game of the week from last week, we had Delaware State Hornets versus South Carolina State Bulldogs. The Bulldogs, they opened up a can of whoop, you know what, on those Hornets. It was 69-35 in that contest last Saturday. And now our HBCU game of the week this week. Now, it just so happens that Jerry Rice's quarterback, Willie Totten, is the quarterback coach for Southern. I got a chance to meet him, take a picture with him on last Saturday.
Satellite.
Well, Mississippi, Satellite, that's him, Satellite Totten. We played Mississippi Valley. The Delta Devils played the Prairie View Panthers. They are HBCU game of the week. They play in Mississippi at Rice-Totten Stadium.
Ooh.
The game's going to be on Saturday at about 3:30. It's going to be on TV, ESPN Plus. The Valley head coach, Kendrick Wade, is struggling trying to get those guys together. They have 0-4 in conference play, 0-8 overall. Bubba McDowell, I know you heard that name. He's the head coach at Prairie View. He's 1-3 in conference play, 3-5 overall. I'm leaning toward Bubba McDowell and them to take care of business at Mississippi Valley this weekend.
Wasn't Bubba McDowell defensive back with the Houston Oilers?
That's him. That's the same guy.
That's the man.
Yeah,
all right. Well,
absolutely.
Listen, well, that's the HBCU game of the week. We're at 59 minutes. Listen, best of luck this week with Texas Southern. Enjoy homecoming. We'll see you next Wednesday. Another FAMU alum. Next week, Scott Uzel, VP and General Manager, I believe, of North American Operations with Nike. So we are going to have a great show next week. So I'm really looking forward to it. So listen, have a great telecast with Melvin this Saturday, and I will be speaking with you, my man. So have a great weekend.
All right, my man. I tell you what, prayers up again for Benny and his family.
Thank you.
We wish nothing but the best up there. That's going to be a tough one. But, hey, man, you be safe. Glad you're back in the hole, man. Do your thing. We'll see you next week.
All right, Al. Peace out.
All right, buddy.
All right. So we're going to go to commercial, but we're not. We're just going to go right to the picks. So this is Benny's picks. This is the Benny the Book picks. Unfortunately, Benny, he's got some major things to worry about here. So I'm doing the picks for Benny this week. So we're going to have Tony throw up the picks. The first game I'm picking for Benny, I like the Cleveland Browns getting 2 points against the Chargers. I love the Chargers, my favorite team, but the Browns, big win last week against the Ravens. Jameis Winston played a lot better than the former quarterback, Deshaun Watson. And the defense for the Browns, I think, is going to put pressure on Justin Herbert, and I think the Browns are going to cover in that game. Second game up, how can you go against the Washington Commanders, right? Redskins, Commodores, whatever you want to call them. Minus 3.5 points. They're favored over the Giants. I love Jaden Daniels. Runaway rookie of the year so far. That Hail Mary last week was unbelievable. We're going to have video of that next week. I'll get Tony to get that up. But I like Washington. Third game, even though the Bengals got thrashed last week by the Eagles, the Raiders are a mess, man. And you got to figure the Burrows Bengals, this is a must-win situation. If they lose, they're out of it. They're done. They have to win. 7.5 point favorites over Las Vegas. I like Cincinnati. In the final game, like I said, Philly beat Cincinnati by 20 last week. The hapless Jacksonville Jaguars, they're a mess. Absolute mess right now. Not sure how long Peterson's going to be at the helm there, but I like the Eagles. They're gaining traction. Jalen Hurts had a great game. 7.5 points. I like them to beat Jacksonville. So, listen, fantastic show tonight. Thank you, everyone who participated, all the questions, all the comments. That was outstanding. Special thanks to Greg Coleman for coming on with us. Outstanding. Always to have a FAMU alum with us. Again, thoughts and prayers go out to Benny and his family tomorrow. I know it's going to be a tough one. We're with you, Ben. We'll see you next week. So for Tony the Tiger Smeraldi, my man in Mission Control, my lovely chat girl Joni, and everyone out there for making this show what it is. We're up to 961 subscribers. We're climbing. We're getting real close to that 1,000, and it's all due to everyone out there. So thank you guys for all the support and the comments and questions each and every week. So keep them coming. This is Les Schwartz. We'll be back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Sports Talking Sports with Nike VP and General Manager of North American Operations, Scott Uzel. Next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Take care, everyone.